Hi everyone, I'm Sanjana and I have Ishaan Shakunt with me today. And let's talk to Ishaan about how to double the ROI of your demand gen engine. And Ishaan is the founder and head of marketing strategy at Spear Growth. And Spear is a B2B marketing agency that helps B2B companies generate pipeline. So, hi Ishaan, thank you so much for joining me today. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me. I have watched a couple of your. Uh, I think I have been following your YouTube for a while. I've watched a couple of the previous episodes, and a lot of the people have come on uh, before this. I have a lot of. Either I've seen them, know them, or have a lot of
Yeah,
discussion with them.
yeah,
So I
I
really
know,
appreciate.
right? Yeah, the the SaaS group is like small, I think, in India. So we all know like everyone of one of us. So yeah, that's great. Cool. So like I wanted to get started by understanding like where did you start your career and where are you now? Because you have an agency today. So I just want to know like how did you start your career and how did you end up, having your own agency? Like how has the journey been so far for you?
Yeah. I think it's most people over glamorize sometimes the start, right? So I'll just like maybe
Yeah.
share. So I've been a curious kid, right, since college. So I would sort of look at, try out different things. Like everything, I would just try out a lot of different ventures back in
Yeah.
college. Also, I think I have a list of 47 things I tried. Then I sort of moved out of college, joined this company, High Radius. There, and so that's where sort of my corporate career started. Learned a lot of the ropes there. Had really good mentors. Ended up leading the SEO team. So that's a fintech unicorn. So did that for a while. Um, Eventually moved on my own, started
Mhm.
consulting, freelancing, did that for a couple of months. And my entire sort of purpose was to sort of get better at marketing
Mm.
and found amazing community. You're also part of Peak, right? So also was found Peak. Early days, there would be a lot of communication there. Like I met a lot of CMOs and sort of learned from them.
Mm.
One really interesting person basically told me that, hey, you know, if you want to get better at marketing, now you need to understand business.
Mm.
So I started here. Like that was the sole reason.
Interesting.
Um,
Yeah. I
yeah,
get it. I get it. Yeah. I mean, that's an inspiring journey for sure. I know like Spear Growth is running successfully and you have a strong team with you on board. So congrats for that and keep doing the good
thank you.
work.
Yeah. I think we started there. Then
Mm.
a lot of really interesting people. So I'll maybe credit a lot of the growth to them. There's a lot of really great folks joined in, and they
Mm.
shared the same sort of, I guess, passion for getting better at
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I think today we are all sort of working towards this thing that, hey, like I say this internally, like B2B marketing is not as good as it should be. Um, and then, yeah, like so a lot of folks are doing great work on sort of improving it, finding new ways. And you keep seeing
Mm.
these new sort of methods to do marketing come up. So we want to like play a major role in that as well.
Yeah, yeah, I would love to talk more about that, how you're reimagining, B2B marketing space. So why don't we get started with,
Mhm.
defining demand gen? Like that's the topic for today, and just cover up the basics first before we move into the details.
Mhm. Yeah, sure. So I think I've in I've tried to speak with a lot of people to try and
Mm.
understand or find a definition everyone agrees to. Like there's so many different ways to define it. So the one definition that most people agree to is like if there's a buying journey, right?
Mm.
There's a moment in time when people become in market. When they're
Mm.
in market to buy products from your category, all marketing you do there is demand capture. Before that, if you are doing anything which is generating more people in market, that is demand gen, right? So it's before people are in market, but it's also needs to be pushing people towards in market, right? So like that's what
Well said.
demand gen is. Like that's the only definition that I've seen almost everyone agree with, because there's just so many different ones out there.
Yeah, yeah, well said. Right. So I also know that you have reimagined the current demand gen model. So why don't we start with that also?
Yeah, I'll tell you why, right? So we are an inbound marketing agency. All we do is like ads and SEO. So now
Mm,
in ads specifically, um, so we do a lot of demand gen with our clients.
mm,
So it's very, it was always like we saw increase in pipeline, but it's always been sort of a black box that, hey, like let's say we've run 6 campaigns, 2 will work. But, there's still like, there wasn't a high enough hit rate with demand gen as high. For example, with demand capture, most marketers are like, yeah, I can run it. I can
mm.
predict revenue. I can do all of this, but demand gen, that wasn't there. And so my entire hypothesis, and I haven't finished what I've sort of set out to do, but then my hypothesis is that if I understand all the pieces, and if I'm able to just get like out of those 2 on 6 campaigns that actually bring pipeline, if I make it 4, right? That's time saved, money saved, effort
Yeah.
saved,
That
so
that will be a
that's,
revolution.
yeah, I mean, and I think all we need to do is understand why things work, right? And
Yeah.
that's what I've been doing. So yeah. So
Mm,
that's why I've been working on this.
yeah.
I can maybe share
Understood.
some things. So I've been interviewing a lot of folks, just because, and I've been collecting a lot of data. I've read, I think, 3, 4 books in the last month on like people and their opinion on demand gen, read multiple, I think hundreds of articles, just trying to collect information, collect the pieces, because a lot of people have figured out different pieces. I'm
Okay.
not creating something new. I'm sort of piecing it all together into a singular model so that it's
Mm,
just like there is clarity across the board. Um,
mm.
yeah, I can maybe
Got it.
share a couple of observations.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. Yeah, for sure.
awesome. So I think one interesting thing. So I had a lot of misconceptions personally when it came to
Mm,
marketing, right? So which slowly got revealed as I was doing this. For example, we start with the marketing funnel, right? And it looks like basically a funnel.
yeah,
And like if you look at a physical funnel, it's like anything you put in sort of does come out of the bottom,
yeah.
right? And then, but that's not true. Most companies that go in on the top never come out from the bottom, right? So okay, then some people start saying it's a leaky funnel, but what I've realized is most companies don't come in the at the bottom. So like, why don't they? Like, what happens, right? So, what I've realized is if you look at individual people inside the funnel, it's
Mm,
basically a decision tree that they're going through, right? There are
okay.
specific that, for example, no one's. If you look at execs and what they do on their day, because I've been doing this for B2B SaaS companies, 6K MRR to 36K MRR. Like that's the primary
Okay.
folks that I usually interview for this, right? So if you look at what execs do, they're like, if I generalize, they usually like take decisions to solve stuff, they build culture, they align or coordinate with other teams, they're sort of maintaining, like they're like firefighting to make sure things don't break, and then they strategize. Right. So in all of that, they're not sort of just going around and window shopping. They don't want to go out and buy something,
Yeah.
right? So what we call top of the funnel is they just, it's just like the top of the decision tree for them, that hey,
Mm,
I've decided to, now I want to start working on this problem, and there are a lot of ways to solve a problem. So
mm.
it's sort of like, and I think I have like screenshots maybe like of this random screenshots I picked up, like this is what a
Sure.
decision tree looks like, right? And this is what a
Yeah.
funnel looks like. It's literally the, like a funnel is goes, is wide at the top, short at the bottom, or like
Mm,
narrow at the bottom. And the decision tree is just the opposite. It's like narrow at the top and broad at the bottom. So basically, these are all the ways a problem can be solved. And your problem, right? The past variable, this is you, like this is you being your company being bought.
mm,
It's one of the ways to solve a problem. So that was the first realization, right? That people are just going through a decision tree. And even if someone is, let's say, in the middle of the funnel, they might never get to your bottom of the funnel.
Mm.
right? And I think that was something, and most people won't get to your bottom of the funnel. So if you just sort of, a lot of the engagement models that we look at, a lot of the content strategies that we look like sort of assume that, hey, now they're in the middle of the funnel, so now if you push them, they'll go get to the bottom. Like, that's not as true as that sounded to me.
Okay.
um, and feel free to cut me off anywhere if there's something you want me to
Yeah,
elaborate
for
on or
sure.
something.
Yeah, for
The
sure.
second thing that I sort of noticed was, I think when someone's, so like if you just take a buyer's journey, right? And we've seen buyer's journeys, they're like the awareness, consideration, decision, right? Like that's what, so people assume that as soon as someone is pain aware,
Mm.
then they'll automatically, so and then they'll get to solution and aware. But it's actually that there's not one problem, right? Like if I sort of go back to what I said about execs, they are solving a lot of problems.
Mm.
So for example, I have to take in at a time there are like 10 problems in my mind. I'm only working on three, maybe, like personally, and I think others are similar. So, and if that is true, then the problem that you're solving is like one of 10. So there's a lot of different buyer journey in parallel. And
Mm.
I think what we do wrong in our content strategy, or what we could do better, is sort of recognize that fact. And I'll sort of bring all of this into like, hey, how do I sort of use all of this into one funnel, essentially? But this was like the second uh, thing that I sort of realized, right? The third thing was, and there's a lot, I'll just sort of go through a few. The third thing was like all the famous, and I'm focusing a lot on buying journeys because of the definition of, by definition, demand gen is before in market. So there's a buying journey that happens. So all in general, like we marketers love naming stuff, right? We love coming up with something new and calling it our own, like putting a flag on, hey,
Yeah.
I created this. But anything that gets famous is famous because it was simple. So it was easy to implement and it was catchy. The problem with that is I've not seen, so the person who made it did a great job of it, but to then give it to the world, they had to simplify it to the point where it lost a lot of its nuance, but still was somewhat useful,
Mm.
right? So all of, if you look at our buying journeys, they're not I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just like, the person who made them knew the nuances, but that person had to remove all of it for it to actually be publishable. So
Okay.
if and let me just show you another example of this, right? So for example, like this is the buying journey that you sort of look at, right? Like this is the
Mm.
common one. Like Gartner released another one, right? So, but if someone just sort of sat down and had the time to actually go ahead and uh, look at what this looks like and like double click on it, and like what are the individual stages, that really helps you build strategies. For example, what I've done here is it's not as refined yet, but for example, these are the different things, right? So it's problem unprioritized, then there's solution. We'll go through some these maybe if you have time. Solution exploration, because, and then vendor selection, and then there's the, I don't know what to call it yet, but you sort of competing against existing solution, you may be replacing a solution, right? So those are
Yeah.
like the four parts, and then there are a lot of sub parts to it,
Mm.
right? And these sub parts, when you remove them, your content becomes more generic and not able to select specific things. For example, just the buying decision making thing is just so much more complex than other pieces. For example, if you just like take alignment, right? There's so much great content about alignment, but it's just so hard for us to understand that what to focus on, right?
Mm.
For example, if you're losing deals or it's something has not become SQL, you can just sort of ask people. You can do win-loss analysis. You can literally just pay people that, hey, we lost the deal. I understand. Can you just come on a call for 10 minutes? I'll pay you like $100 for a 10-minute call, and just sort of come on a call and tell me why we lost the deal. And then that could be such an interesting thing. For example, how do you get into how are new vendors sourced, right? So with that, you can sort of figure out that, oh, why do niche communities work? Why does networking work? So, and if those things work, like, shouldn't there already be like a networking manager in marketing, or something, right? Like
Makes
there
sense.
has to be like someone who's just maintaining relationships with people who are external influencers in your buying journey, right? So just stuff like this, right? And you're able to then, and I can maybe show later on how to do this, but how we are using this. But this is the funnel. And also, like, this is one, like another sort of related observation is that people don't understand who they're competing against.
Okay.
For example, early on, you're not competing against any of your competitors. As I said, they have a lot of problems. So you're just competing against other problems. So all your marketing should just, be against other problems. And people just say, oh, I don't have a competitor and all of that. But hey, you have usually almost every SaaS company has at least two indirect competitors, like major indirect competitors, which because anything a SaaS does for most SaaS, it can be done by hiring a large team, or it can be done for most SaaS, not all SaaS, but for most SaaS, it can be done through an agency. I'm not saying it's a better way, but it is a way, right? And then there are other types of SaaS. So you're just competing against other solution types in the space. And then finally, when it's like when they're in market, that's when you're competing against competitors. So when I see a lot of us sort of do marketing, and I've done this a lot, like where, I'm not focusing more on the problem, but I'm focusing more on other things. I'm not focusing on, it's not problem awareness, it's problem prioritization. Like people know the problem, they just haven't prioritized it.
Okay.
Right? Like that's something that I guess was another major sort of thing in how do we do messaging, right? Like the messaging could get better. So I have like a couple of others. I'm not sure if this is like useful, if this is interesting. Do you want me to sort of share more learnings, or should I just go ahead and share the demand gen model? Does good demand gen look like and stuff like that?
I think, yeah, we can talk about some examples because that's what
Yeah,
would be helpful for the listeners to visualize what you're talking
yeah,
about. But I also think it would be nice if you could define like what's a good demand gen model or strategy
yeah,
that you think works. You can start from
100%.
there.
Yeah, yeah. So I think good demand gen, according to me, does four things. And this is just me collecting again. So from my observations and also observations from a lot of other
Yeah,
marketers,
yeah.
I used to host sort of roasts that, hey, I have a demand gen model, come roast it. Right. So from those, I've sort of got a lot of insights. Um, so and obviously we work with like 50 plus clients. So by running that for 50 different companies, I've in like 2 years, I've had like a lot of, I guess I was privileged enough to sort of see what worked, what didn't work, and what were common characteristics across everything that actually worked, right? So, um, one is you just need to sort of, and we've just said this, it increases the motivation or the priority of the problem solving path that is favorable to your company,
Got it.
right? So, there is a lot of different ways they can solve a problem. So it just sort of increases the priority to sort of go down the problem. So like there's a lot of problems. This problem is very important. So you can sort of do you can show that it's actually hurting you more than you think. Maybe it's easier to solve than you think. So the priority, like if it's like a priority, right? You can increase priority by even either saying it's more important or it's easier to solve. So if you
Yeah,
can prove either of these or both,
yeah.
it sort of does this. And usually the pain message works better just psychologically, right? So just poke the pain that, hey, like you are facing this pain, agitated like continuously, that, hey, you're facing this. And they just sort of, through repetition, they sort of see it. Second is it sort of associates your company with the problem, right?
Okay.
Um, and obviously, like as the solution, not as the problem. But so whenever they sort of think of the whenever they think of the problem, they're thinking of your company,
Company.
right?
Yeah.
And I think those old, like those TV serials sort of ads did a great job with their jingles and stuff that you would remember. That did such a good, like you remember like like all those old like like the jingles, and then hey, this company is associated with this for us, right?
Yeah,
This
I get
company
that.
is,
Yeah.
and I don't think we do a good enough job at 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 least here, right? So here, one thing you can do is like, yes, there is copy that works. Yes, do copy testing, but you can have like a core message, or
Mm.
sometimes even a theme. You can have characters between ads and just run like series, run things, say the same thing in different ways, see what words hit, but also figure out what messages hit. So,
Okay.
for example, like in the sort of more nuanced buyer's journey that I sort of created, right? What we do is we sort of sit down with our clients because they know their audience better than us,
Yeah.
even though we do a lot of research, but they will always know them better. We sort of sit down with them and say that, hey, we think these are the places, or these are three stages where we want to bet most of your audience would want is in, right? Or would sort of increase the priority of your problem if we shared messages from, let's say, maybe they don't understand the ROI, right? Maybe
Mm.
the ROI isn't as clear. Maybe the problem, like they're just not, they're really just problem unaware. They just don't, or they just don't know this is a solvable problem. Like, yes, they're hurting, but this thing that's been it's done this way. So that's like the third, I guess, way. So anyway, so like we sort of take these bets of what message to use. And once
Mm.
you've taken that bet, you can then figure out what messages, like let's say you have three messages, and say that in different ways, see what sticks, and then
Mm.
go to a place where you sort of repeating that message in different ways and using different copy, different images, different maybe formats, use video, do all of that, but have a consistent message so that it sort of gets ingrained in your sort of audience's mind, right?
Okay.
That's like the third sort of piece of demand gen.
Mm.
Sorry, second one. The third one is it sort of reduces friction in the problem solving path. So I love saying this. If you give any competent exec 100 years, that person will solve every problem they have. Like, you don't have to do demand gen, you don't have to educate them. They will go out, they'll solve it. They're pretty savvy. Like, that's what they are good at. That's why they are where they are. So once you've sort of prioritize the problem, they're going to solve it on their own. So it's more of you helping them sort of get the resources they want. And
Okay.
it's and people don't solve in the best fit way. Like, every decision you take, there's always going to be a better way to solve it. Most people take a decision that is this a good enough way to solve it. And if you just saw, so that's like another insight, right? So if you just give something which is good enough for what they want, like I'm not saying you just should be average, it's like good enough and it's the best from the set that they found, they'll just take that path and use it, and then they'll go to the next problem. So you don't have to, they won't spend an eternity trying to find every different way, analyzing everything. So if you just sort of make it easiest for them to understand your path and reduce the friction in solving the problem in that way, with a bunch of content which they have access to, they'll just use it,
Mm.
right? And finally, it just sort of builds trust and likability, right? So like, do you like the company? And
Mm.
I do a lot of sales as well, uh,
Okay.
because you know, I had to found it, so I do all the sales at Spear Growth still. So if you sort of schedule a call with me, you're sort of speaking with me, uh, but sort of, which means I've seen how many times we won deals just because they like me. There was
Got it.
nothing better in like what they were sort of comparing us with someone else. And sometimes for their needs, two agencies are identical, they just like me better, and then they sort of bought from us, right?
Mm.
And you can sort of build these things, these perceptions, before they come on a call.
Yeah,
So
basically you're trying to build the trust with them.
correct, yeah. Trust, likability, maybe even in the right context,
Yeah.
right? It's like, hey, you wouldn't buy, like, I don't know, maybe I would, but most people won't buy like I don't know, like tacos from HubSpot, right? Like,
Mm.
maybe in the right context. So that's like
Yeah.
what good demand gen looks like. I can maybe create like I can maybe show, like every company should have their own funnel, but I can maybe share a very simple funnel that I think most would work for most
Yeah.
companies, which becomes a good starting point.
Yeah, that would be excellent. Yeah.
Got it. So by the way, when you do demand gen, before that, if you can do demand capture, basically run your Google ads, run your Bing, run your G2, like do all of that.
Mandatory.
That's just do start with demand capture. Don't start demand gen before you do demand capture. As I said, people will solve the problem on their own. So like there will be demand if there can be demand, there probably will be demand, right? So uh, in some industries you really have to push it, but yeah, like especially with enterprise deals, maybe you cannot target it as well and all. But yeah, if you can do demand gen, do demand gen, max it out. Sorry, if you can do demand capture, do demand capture, max it out, and then come to demand gen, right? So this is not the first thing you start. So this is like a good funnel. Easy way to, you can do this across a lot of channels, but like a good place to start is just maybe if you're using like say LinkedIn, right? So don't so in LinkedIn, maybe you find a very good, and you work a lot on creating a good account list. So use all of your different data vendors, look at which data vendor works for you. For us, we sort of tested, I think, 4 or 5 different data vendors, and one of them worked really well for Spear Growth. For our clients, a different data vendor, like the same vendor won't work for them. So you really have to test out which works. Once you find, so that data, so the reason why you're doing that is you're trying to find a list of companies that you really want to generate demand in, right? And this can be segmented and all of that. But let's say you have one segment of that audience now. Then you can start running ads to specific people in those companies, which I think a lot of people do. And then this is where it sort of becomes different. Once you sort of run ads in these different companies, you now have technology. Like I think even if you don't use your 6sense data, shout out to Factors, they've sort of integrated. So even if you don't have that sort of data of de-anonymization that people have come to your website, which pages have they visited, it will be good to have that. But if you can just sort of like get, okay, these are the companies that have engaged with our content, have been seeing or consuming our content, you can get a lot of this data on LinkedIn natively without paying for much, right? Just upload your audience and you'll see that data, which is amazing, right? So once you have that, you can then sort of try and segment them in 2 parts. So there is an audience that you've been running campaigns, and the message of those campaigns are problem prioritization.
Okay.
Right. So you're not selling your product, you're not running case studies. What you're doing is primarily problem prioritization campaigns that, hey, this problem is important. As soon as you see that, hey, they've prioritized the problem based on whether or not you've seen any intent signal. Have they gone to a certain page? Have they sort of raised their hand and said something? If you've not seen an intent signal, maybe you're getting second party, third party intent signals as well. But as soon if then you can segment your audience in 2 parts, whether they have intent signals and they're engaged with you, or they're engaged with you but no intent signals.
Okay.
So for people with intent signals, you can say something like, you can actually reach out to folks in their company and say that, hey, we noticed that you've been engaging with X, which is the topic, right? Is it okay if I shared Y, which is like a content piece which will help them really solve that problem, which may be like a superset of what you do and other ways to solve it.
Okay.
Right. And PS, don't worry, this won't turn into a sales pitch unless you want it to, right? So like that could be a really interesting sort of reach out. No sales, and there's no follow-ups to that, maybe, or you can have a follow-up sequence up to you, right? So just sort of run that. Actually reach out to the companies who are engaging with you. Send them the content piece, and that's it, right? And then the second piece is, because these companies will automatically come and check you out, and they'll get to the places where they're now an engaged company and they've sort of gone to high intent pages. There you can then run, and then you can just directly run your social proof case studies. You can reach out and try to sort of, hey, can we help you sort of buy this? All of that is sort of done there, right? When they have intent, because people, unless they're trying to buy, don't like being sold to. So if you just, it's like a very simple model, like an extremely simple model, which you will have to figure out what problem you're sort of highlighting, what problem people have engaged with. If people have engaged with certain problems, then you sort of give them a better way to solve that problem, or a easy way, like make the reduce friction in solving that problem through content that you can share with them. And then maybe you also have, if someone has shown intent, you can use de-anonymization, you can use all the data signals you want, you can use third party, second party, and then you can sort of also just reach out and just help them make the decision essentially. And that will sort of, I think this model is better to not put people off, but also drive demos, also do that and figure out what messages worked and sort of, drill down on that essentially.
Yeah. I think, this is the right way to do it. I've heard like only from a few companies that are doing this like very well, but other companies that I've seen, they try to complicate things. Like they're not able to simplify. Like how you just explained, they're not able to like have a simplified thought process of this, and that's where they struggle. So I really get it. I guess this will help companies struggling a bit, and yeah. So I guess like we are running out of time. So maybe like I just have two questions before we wrap up.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to companies that are just starting to develop their demand gen strategy?
Yeah, it won't work unless you solve for the messy middle, or the, I think, adopted or an abandoned middle, right? For example, like if you run great pain point messaging and you run great demand capture, but you just have to still have that content piece that people actually, and have a way for people to find it, that content piece in the middle. So don't do it if you don't have the middle sort of piece of content which helps them solve the problem in the way you're suggesting. Otherwise, they'll prioritize the problem, solve it in a different way, which won't bring in any pipeline for you. So that's one. So don't start it too early, essentially.
Got it.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think what you're basically saying is think through the entire funnel before you start. So don't just start with, just with an idea or like something like that. Just think through everything and then start. Yeah. Got it. And how do you like stay up to date with the latest trends and best practices in the demand gen industry, right? I like what are the resources that you recommend that our listeners could go to learn more?
I I've gone through a lot of, so I think it's all very fragmented right now. Like there's a few really good folks doing really good stuff. Like I think Sangram and his team sort of at JTM Partners,
Yeah.
they've put out really good content, extremely good content. Then there
Yeah.
are like I think then there's a lot of vendors, but I'm a little biased against the content that data vendors or someone would provide, because they also have an agenda to sort of push that. But then there's a few companies who sort of, so I think there's a few creators. I don't know if there's one single place to go and learn most of this. I'm trying to create that, not that, hey, like it's not going to be my content, but just like a place where every good content piece I've found, I'll just link to it
That's a
in
good
one
one.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll build it by the end of the year for sure. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'll definitely build it by the end of the year. I'll
Yeah.
link to every good piece of content that I found, every good book, every good resource, and most of it is going to be not ours. But yeah, like every good stuff that I find, every good insight I have, every research I make, I'll try and sort of make a place where I've just listed down. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll
Amazing.
send you a link.
Yeah, for sure. I'll add it to the description whenever it is ready.
Thank you.
Great.
uh, yeah,
Thanks. Yeah.
one
Yeah,
thing I
go on.
can do today is maybe I can just share the sort of buying journey that I've shared today, right? I can just sort of
For
share
sure.
that uh, in like a Miro board or a link, and we can add that to the description.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that. Also, like I
Uh,
can keep listening to your demand gen strategy, but today we are running out of time. So what I'll do is I'll give your LinkedIn profile in the description so people can connect with you later to
yeah,
learn more about what you're building. I think that's like really interesting. People should talk to you, connect on a call, like an intro call, or maybe like anything like that to just get an idea of how you're solving it and how they can solve it. So I'll do that for you. Great.
yeah, I
So
appreciate that.
Amazing. So thanks, Ishaan. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. So yeah, I'll give you a link and people can connect with you later. And I'll also provide some links to the resources that you mentioned, like the Sangram GTM Partner one. I think that's an interesting place to get started. So yeah, I'll do that. So yeah, it was nice talking to you, Ishaan, and thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Sanjana. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.